In 2025, a man's freedom might cost him more than he ever imagined. Every year, thousands of men sign away their autonomy in what looks like a promise of love. But for many, it becomes a trap with invisible chains. Divorce courts drain fortunes, social expectations crush individuality, and the very institution meant to bring happiness can quietly strip away identity, dreams, and dignity. Across social media, stories explode, men losing homes, reputations shattered, friendships eroded, all because they followed a script written by a society that rewards conformity over courage. Meanwhile, the world applauds, calling it tradition, calling it normal, while the silent victims bear the consequences. Our hero, the thoughtful, independent man, stands on the edge, watching the parade of pitfalls, sensing the looming shadow of commitment that most walk into blind. He knows the truth few dare to admit, but what happens next will challenge everything you thought you knew about love, commitment, and control. By the time a man says, "I do," the statistics are already stacked against him. In the United States alone, nearly 50% of marriages end in divorce, and for men, the fallout is often harsher than the numbers suggest. Custody battles strip fathers of time with their children, and alimony or asset division can leave a lifetime of earnings evaporated in a courtroom. Social media is filled with viral stories. A man losing his home, a career ruined by public shaming, friends drifting away as he navigates the emotional labyrinth alone. One trending thread recounted a man who, after a decade of marriage, walked out with nothing but a fraction of his savings, forced to rebuild not only finances, but identity. Another story highlighted the subtle erosion of self-respect, where day-to-day control over decisions, hobbies, and even friendships is chipped away under the guise of compromise. These aren't isolated incidents. They are a reflection of systemic pressures that glorify sacrifice while masking the cost. And yet, most men blindly walk into it, unaware of what's waiting for them, convinced that love is enough to shield them. The consequences aren't just financial, they're existential, striking at freedom, confidence, and the very sense of self. The world applauds compliance, but behind the applause lies a quiet villain, societal expectation, whispering rules that few dare to question. And it is here in these pressures that the true antagonist of our story begins to emerge. Marriage, in its modern guise, is not just a union. It is a carefully choreographed system, a societal machine designed to channel ambition, wealth, and autonomy into predictable, controllable patterns. Within this construct, certain archetypes rise to prominence, each playing a role in maintaining the illusion of romance while quietly asserting control. There is the gold-digging partner whose charm is precise, deliberate, and almost hypnotic. She smiles sweetly, but in her eyes is a storm waiting to strip him of everything he has built. Then there are the manipulative in-laws, wielding expectations as weapons, cloaking demands and polite concern while quietly reshaping the hero's life according to their own vision. And hovering above all, society itself, the invisible giant, casts a shadow of judgment, mocking independence, applauding conformity, celebrating those who sacrifice their freedom in the name of tradition. These forces operate not through brute force, but through subtle coercion, whispering rules and enforcing norms with a blend of praise and shame. A man who resists is labeled selfish, immature, or incapable of commitment. Yet compliance comes at a steep price. Careers stagnate as energy and focus are diverted to appeasing the whims of others. Friendships fade as priorities shift to navigating expectations rather than pursuing passion. Even the mind begins to bend, questioning its own desires, as though autonomy itself is a dangerous luxury. The villain's power is intoxicating because it is invisible, theatrical, and seductive. One viral court case tells the story of a man who, after years of measured success, found himself drained, financially, emotionally, socially, while the system celebrated the illusion of fairness. Another tale circulates endlessly online. A man who once exuded confidence and independence became hesitant to speak, to act, to dream, under the weight of orchestrated pressures he had never fully anticipated. Yet for all their grandeur, these forces are not invincible. Every storm leaves traces, every manipulation carries cracks, and every overreach sows the seeds of eventual reckoning. But amid the smoke, some men see through the theater. They recognize the patterns, understand the risks, and prepare themselves for confrontation. They refuse to surrender autonomy blindly. And for our hero, whose story is just beginning, this clarity will become his shield, his strategy, and ultimately, the force that will challenge the very system designed to ensnare him. Our hero is not defined by rebellion or anger. He is defined by clarity. A man who values freedom above all, he measures success not in possessions, but in the quiet dignity of choice, in the steady growth of mind and character. He has watched friends stumble into marriage, some crushed by debt, others fractured by emotional strain, and he has taken note. Each failure around him is a lesson, each whispered warning a cautionary tale he carries like armor. He has faced subtle societal pressure, relatives pressing for commitment, colleagues congratulating those who settle down, a world that frames marriage as the ultimate benchmark of manhood. And yet he moves through it with calm awareness, refusing to let expectations dictate the trajectory of his life. In his own past, he has known the sting of failed attempts at connection, relationships that promised love but revealed misalignment, misunderstanding, and compromise that felt more like surrender than partnership. From each encounter, he has learned resilience, patience, and self-respect. Friends turn to him for counsel, recognizing in him a steady anchor amid chaos. He is not perfect, he has doubts, but his clarity is rare, his foresight a shield. He knows the cost of blind conformity and the value of deliberate choice. And now, standing at the threshold of the societal gauntlet, he senses the storm gathering. Soon, he would face the ultimate test, and the world was watching. The confrontation began subtly, almost innocuously. Family dinners turned into interrogations. Friends' casual questions edged into critiques. When will you settle down? Don't you want a family? Social media posts flaunted pictures of couples celebrating milestones, their lives framed as ideal benchmarks, their happiness implied as the only acceptable path. Each remark, each congratulatory comment aimed at others, was a quiet push, a tug toward conformity that the hero felt with every fiber of his being. Yet he remained composed, calm, measured. Where others saw pressure, he saw opportunity, an arena to test conviction against expectation. It's not about rejecting love, he said once quietly as a cousin insisted. Marriage is everything. It's about choosing what aligns with one's life and protecting the freedom to grow, he replied, his voice steady, unshaken. The words rippled uneasily through the room, leaving murmurs, surprised glances, and a tension that refused to dissipate. The stakes escalated further online. Comment threads devolved into arguments with strangers who framed independence as selfishness. Opinion pieces hailed marriage as inevitable, portraying those who resisted as immature or incomplete. Friends tried to mediate, offering warnings cloaked in concern. You'll regret it if you wait too long. Each attempt to persuade him only highlighted the societal machinery at work. The chorus of voices insisting that deviation equaled failure. With every argument, the stakes rose higher, and one wrong move could cost him everything. Social credibility, familial approval, even friendships. But the hero did not flinch. He observed the attacks, measured the logic, and noted the cracks in assumptions everywhere. The villain, the institution, the expectations, the relentless chorus of conformity, believed itself untouchable. It underestimated the quiet power of clarity, foresight, and calm resolve. And in that silence, in the measured patience of a man unwilling to surrender his autonomy, a turning point began to form. The world had presented its challenge, and the hero was ready to respond. Not with panic, not with anger, but with precision. Soon the counterattack would come, and it would leave an indelible mark. He stood, calm, unshaken, while the room held its collective breath. Every expectation, every jab, every whispered doubt from friends, family, and strangers on screens far and wide converged into a moment of reckoning. Then he spoke, not with anger, not with desperation, but with the precision of a man who had studied the terrain of life and understood its hazards. Look around, he began, voice steady. We celebrate independence in every other realm, careers, education, innovation, but somehow the same freedom becomes a threat when it comes to marriage. What we fail to see is that surrendering choice, risking financial ruin, or losing the very essence of self isn't a romantic risk, it's a societal trap. He paused, letting the words settle like stones in a still pond, watching reactions ripple. Some nodded, some frowned, others whispered, questioning long-held assumptions. He told stories of men who lost fortunes after years of blind commitment, of friends stripped of time with their children, of colleagues forced to abandon dreams because they had followed a script written by expectation rather than reason. Independence, he said, isn't selfishness, it's survival. It's the courage to build a life on your own terms, to pursue passion without interference, to safeguard your emotional and financial stability. That's heroism, and that's respect. Social media chatter ignited immediately in his imagination. Viral threads praising the clarity, heated debates questioning traditions, thousands sharing screenshots of his arguments as memes of rationality against blind conformity. The villain, the institution of expectation, paused, stunned, unprepared for this measured assault. Arrogance met calm, and the room seemed to tip, the scales shifting subtly toward reason. Yet he did not gloat. His triumph was quiet, dignified, a moral high ground that demanded reflection. The counterattack was complete, not with destruction, but with revelation. He had exposed the cracks in the narrative that had long controlled men's lives, illuminating an alternative path where freedom, dignity, and foresight reigned supreme. But the aftermath would be even more explosive than the confrontation itself. The moment he finished, the echoes didn't fade. They multiplied. Within hours, the conversation had exploded across platforms. Clips of his calm, precise arguments circulated, overlaid with captions like, "Finally, someone saying what we've all feared to admit," and "The independence debate no one dared have." Comment sections became battlegrounds. Some praised his clarity, applauding the courage to question societal scripts. Others attacked him, labeling him arrogant, naive, or even bitter. The hero watched as virtual waves of support and outrage collided, each reaction underscoring the resonance of his message. Friends reached out in disbelief and admiration. Some whispered relief, confessing they had felt the same pressures but lacked the courage to voice it. Others debated him, testing every point, inadvertently amplifying the lesson that freedom, self-respect, and deliberate choice were not just personal luxuries, they were imperatives. Analysts and commentators picked up the story, framing it as a cultural moment, a new lens on male independence, challenging centuries of expectation. Memes proliferated, some humorous, some biting, all a testament to how deeply the ideas had struck a chord. Even strangers on the street felt the ripples. Conversations shifted subtly in workplaces, cafes, and community spaces. The villain, the weight of expectation and tradition, had not vanished, but its dominance was questioned. People who had once accepted conformity as inevitability were now reconsidering, debating the stakes, calculating the costs. The hero's calm reasoning became a reference point, a quiet standard for reflection amid chaos. Yet the tension remained. Every wave of praise was mirrored by criticism. Every viral post met with skepticism. The clash of belief systems intensified, sparking more discussion, more questioning, and more awareness. The stakes of autonomy, identity, and choice had been cast into public consciousness, forcing a society to grapple with what had been quietly ignored. In the chaos, a universal truth emerged, one every man needed to see. The room fell silent, but his truth echoed louder than any applause. In that quiet, a clarity settled over the chaos, a simple yet profound realization. Independence is not rebellion, but necessity. Self-respect is not arrogance, but survival, and deliberate choice is not hesitation, but courage. The hero had reframed the narrative, showing that the value of a man's freedom, dignity, and foresight far outweighs the fleeting praise of societal expectation. He spoke not to condemn love, not to attack those who follow tradition, but to illuminate a higher principle. Life is not a checklist of milestones imposed by others. It is a canvas on which one must boldly paint, guided by vision, wisdom, and integrity. Every decision carries consequences, and the bravest act is often the one that protects the self, nurtures growth, and honors truth. In choosing freedom over blind conformity, men preserve the power to pursue dreams, forge meaningful connections on their own terms, and maintain a legacy of dignity that cannot be stripped by law, society, or circumstance. Stories of friends who faltered and fell were no longer warnings of fear. They were lessons in awareness. The hero's calm rationale became a beacon for those who had doubted themselves, for those who had quietly questioned, and for those who were ready to reclaim autonomy in a world that insists conformity equals virtue. Courage is measured not in noise or spectacle, but in the quiet, deliberate decisions that protect one's essence. And in that moment, the universal lesson crystallized. True strength lies in foresight, in the power to anticipate consequences, in the courage to stand firm against invisible pressures. It is in safeguarding dignity, prioritizing awareness, and embracing deliberate choice that life is lived fully. Every man deserves to ask himself before he says yes, what does freedom cost? Every man deserves to pause, to reflect, and to act with clarity rather than submission. The truth, once glimpsed, cannot be unlearned, and it resonates far beyond any single confrontation, touching every life willing to listen, understand, and choose wisely. So far, we've seen the cost of blind conformity, the quiet power of independence, and the courage it takes to choose deliberately. Marriage, tradition, and expectation are not enemies, but surrendering autonomy without reflection can be. Our hero showed that clarity, foresight, and self-respect are not just ideals. They are survival, dignity, and freedom in practice. Now it's your turn to reflect. What pressures are shaping your choices? What sacrifices are invisible until it's too late? Every man deserves to pause, to question, and to act with awareness rather than habit. If this perspective resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to join the conversation, comment with your own insights, and share this video with those who need to hear it. Every discussion strengthens clarity. Every shared story empowers someone else to choose wisely. Remember, before you say yes, consider, what does freedom cost?